Dear Heavenly Father, we do thank you for this time that we could come together as friends and family of Bryan McClain. Father, we just pray that as we talk amongst ourselves, that we uplift each other, that we remember who Bryan was, what he meant to us. Help us to reflect on that and to remember it. And we just ask for your blessing upon that. We just ask that as we talk to each other, that we have uplifting conversation, that you would bless that as well. And we just ask for the food, Father, that you would just bless that. And we just thank you for it. And we just give you the thanks and the praise for all of this. In Jesus' name, amen.
We have Army friends from the early 80s. We have co-workers of Bryan, some of whom worked with Bryan years ago, and they came here to be with us. Thank you. Of course, we have our kilted friends. And neighbors came. The mayor of Vienna actually was here earlier because her daughter was in my Girl Scout troop. And of course, our family from both sides. From West Virginia, people are here, from Pennsylvania, from Georgia, from Florida, Colorado. And I thank you all for coming. I actually had to turn people away who wanted to come because there was just too many. It's a testament to the kind of man Bryan was. He was the best husband a girl could ask for. We stopped celebrating Valentine's Day at our house a long time ago, maintaining that Valentine's Day is for rookies. Every day was Valentine's Day at our home. Every day, Bryan told me how much he loved me and valued me. Just about every day, he told me that he would never have achieved the success he did without me. But I thought to myself, I'm the luckiest girl in the world to have latched onto his coattails and gotten on this amazing ride. He had a way of seeing the ridiculous in things and making us laugh. And just recently, Bryan told me that watching me put my kayak in the truck was like watching an ant carry a hot dog. Bryan was the best father our kids could have had. They were a little right-brained three-pack, and I'm very left-brained. When they were little, he rolled around on the floor playing with them, and when they got older, he would have great conversations with them around the dinner table, all kinds of military history stuff, or Celtic history, or, times growing up. He always knew when to push and expect more, and when to ease up because they were overwhelmed. He made them laugh. He made them feel good about themselves, and he helped them challenge themselves to do their best in all things. And he always told them that he loved them and he was proud of them. Bryan was the leader of our merry band, the captain of our happy ship. We know how to march and we know how to sail, but it won't be the same with our leader, our compass. There's not near as much laughter now. At work, Bryan also expected the best from his employees. He mentored many of them, encouraged them to take on challenging assignments. When Bryan walked up to someone and said, "Samir, I have an opportunity for you to excel." Samir would laugh and wonder what kind of hell he was in for. But each employee took that as a signal that Bryan had faith in their capabilities and wanted to help them grow. He worked together with his people so they could all experience success. Bryan mentored many employees through the years. Occasionally, he'd get a message from someone saying, "Hey, I was just thinking about you because this issue came up at work and I knew how to handle it because you taught me this very thing 8 years ago. So thanks for believing in me and mentoring me." That's the kind of impact Bryan had on other people. This room is full of people who trained under Bryan, who threw against him, or threw better in their own class because of Bryan's coaching. I was always amazed at how Bryan could tailor his coaching to each individual thrower. Out on the field, Bryan was always talking with everyone, laughing, listening, and helping. His quick wit and easy laugh will be missed on those hot summer afternoons. We've always said that the camaraderie of the Highland Games was 50% of the reason to compete, and Bryan was a big part of that camaraderie. Bryan also played an important role within his family. He's one of 4 brothers, each of whom is very different from the other. At family gatherings or in the close confines of a hunting cabin, those differences can be magnified. But Bryan was like a lubricant. He understood people's strengths and weaknesses and those old attitudes of his brothers that were born in childhood. And he worked his magic to make things more harmonious while they were all cramped up with their dad in the hunting cabin. But that's what Bryan did. He made us all better for having known him. And now, sadly, we walk away with our new and improved selves and try to move forward without his guidance, his support, and his humor. We have to do it for ourselves now. But it'll be okay, because he made us stronger. He gave us the tools to do it on our own.
My name is Frank Henry, and I'm one of the athletes that was coached by Bryan. First, I want to thank Trish, Kat, and Carl for sharing Bryan with us. I was thinking about how often I must have been at the McClain house over the 14 years that I practiced there. And multiplying 8 months per year and averaging 11 times per month, I've done the math. I was there over 1,200 times. Each practice lasted 3 to 6 hours, and over the years, there were dozens of us. So you can only imagine how much imposition, I guess, that must have been. But there's never a word that wasn't friendly or helpful. So thank you for sharing Bryan, and thank you, Trish, and for all of the work you did behind the scenes to allow Bryan the time to help, coach, and to encourage us. Second, I have an announcement to make. Bryan was very good at the sheaf event, where a 16-pound bag of chopped rope, I know that sounds exciting to many of you, but it simulated a sheaf of oats and it was tossed up for height. Bryan was in fact a national champion one year, tossing a sheaf 31 feet over a bar. And he was about pretty close to 50 years old at the time. That's 16 pounds up on top of a 3-story building. He was also good at the weight for height, tossing a 42-pound weight with one hand over a 15-foot bar. But most of all, Bryan was an excellent coach, and in his honor, the Scottish Masters Athletics International, the organization that puts on the annual Masters World Championships, has created an award in his memory, the Bryan McClain Combined Weight for Height Award, which will be awarded starting this November at the Masters World Championships in Austin, Texas. There are 3 similar awards: combined weight for distance, the combined stones for distance, and the combined hammers for distance. Bryan's will be the 4th and final award in that series. These awards are presented annually to the person who, with the given implements, comes closest to or breaks a world record in those events. It's a traveling trophy, so the athletes take them home for a year and their name is added to the back of the award. This has been going on now for over 20 years. The award itself is a large wooden targe. If you know what a targe is, it's kind of like a Celtic shield. It's about 1.5 feet in diameter and it's decorated with brass studs, exactly. And winning one is considered a very high honor. Unfortunately, I don't have it with me. It's being handcrafted at the moment, but I do have some photos that I'll put on the tables over here, and you can have a look and see exactly what this looks like. Thank you all, and Sláinte, Bryan.
Short guy.
You can stand on the hearth like I did.
We weren't going to go there. And I'm even borrowing Alex's glasses because my old 6 forgot them at the hotel, so I don't usually wear this shade. It's a privilege to be asked to speak in honor of Bryan and his family. You'll all be relieved, as I am, that I have a time cap, so I can't ramble on for 30 minutes. Bryan's one told me, for a shy guy, you damn well speak too damn much. I first saw Bryan in 2002 at Williamsburg Games. Bryan was, as usual, explaining the games to some bystanders, and an older gentleman asked, how big do you have to be to flip that tree? And Bryan responded, it's not how big, it's spending the time learning the technique and the willingness to tackle a 16-foot tree. And that comment stuck with me because a month later I was at Richmond for my first games. Of course, just my luck, the first two guys I meet are Bryan McClain and David McClellan, who are two gigantic human beings. And of course, you know, they shook my hand and I went into the corner of the tent and think, dear God, what have I gotten myself into? And Dave McKenzie hands me the athlete's waiver and it says height and weight, 5'4", and I look around, I'm like, 155 sounds good. I weighed 130 soaking wet with a cinder block strapped to me. I handed my form to Dave McKenzie and Dave goes, 155 my ass, you start hurting yourself, I'm pulling you off the field. And Bryan taps me on the shoulder and says, don't worry, we're gonna watch out for him today. And the day ended and Bryan, as usual, walked up to me and wrote on a piece of paper his name, his phone number, and his address and said, give me a call over the winter, we're gonna get you going. And if there's ever a demonstration of how Bryan was with others, it's that. Years later, Bryan's wit and humor were on full display. A reporter came out to the Richmond games and decided he wanted to do an article, and for some unknown reason decided to interview me. So he comes underneath the tent and he's like, does anybody know who John Campbell is? And a bunch of the guys point out to the field. Well, Sprout, which is what I go by, is out there getting ready to throw, and the reporter looks out and 6 foot, 5'10", 6 foot, 5'4". And the reporter actually looks at Bryan and goes, which one's Sprout? And without missing a beat, Bryan says, he's the guy out there built like a mailbox with arms. I still laugh at that story every time, and when I meet new colleagues in the business I'm in, I said, yeah, just look for the short guy. I'm built like a mailbox with arms. Like many others, that first meeting in '02 became a long friendship. I spent many a time coming up to Northern Virginia, you know, with Trish and the kids, and Bryan brought a lot of us into this family. A lot of us probably would have not stuck with it. He trained with them, he invited us into his home, he shared his family. Many of us here today are probably wearing or carrying or have at home a patch that says trained by Bryan McClain. I've got it on today. We all wear this very proudly in our hearts, in our kilts. Bryan was not only a wonderful husband, father, brother, and son, he was a big brother that many of us didn't know we really needed. He was our coach, he was our competitor, he was our friend and our drinking mate. When we had a wake for Bob Stewart years ago, I think Bryan poured it for everybody and didn't drink a damn bit, but the rest of us got hammered. Bryan showed that while we were all competitors on the field, there was something bigger about the games. You know, when somebody was having a rough day or doubting themselves or having problems with their technique, even if he was competing against them, Bryan would cheer them up, talk to them, point out things that they were doing. And over all the cheers and encouragement, you could hear Bryan's kind of calm voice just telling them, come on, you got this. And even if you didn't get it, Bryan would walk over, tap you on the shoulder and say, you'll get it next time. You know, Bryan had a way of reminding us that we all can reach our goals in life and in these games. And that we had this family supporting us. And if we didn't succeed, come back, try again. When I finally cleared the weight for height, which is at that time 56 pounds, now I'm older, so yay, 42, by the way. It's heavier when you're older, so it doesn't matter. I cleared the height, and the first guy to jump up was Bryan, and he ran over and patted me and gave me a hug and said, I told you you'd get it next time. It took 11 years, but he was right. Over the 20 years, I've been very blessed to meet many men and women in this family, and they are family to me. They know my kids know them, many of them are uncles to them. We're all better off that Bryan made it a point to make sure that we all felt like a part of his family and this Highland family. Our brother has passed, and his place will be forever in our hearts. And while Bryan will be missed, his legacy continues on through hundreds of people whose lives he touched. Trish and the kids, thank you for sharing him with us. We will endeavor to honor his memory and how he supported each of us every day. We love you all. God bless you, Bryan. We'll see you on the other side of the trig.
Not so short. Hopefully I can be as short and somewhat distinguished as previous speakers. I'll try to do my best to keep it together.
Bryan Edward McClain, second son of Harold and Joan McClain, born on June 8, 1962 in Kansas City, Kansas. Right out of the gate, he was going to be challenged. He was born with his left foot was bent out in the opposite direction of a club foot. For the first 9 months of his life, doctors kept his left foot in a cast that they changed weekly. From then to age 7, he wore corrective shoes, but on the opposite feet to continue the correction as he grew. As Bryan had said many times, he had manufactured feet. As a result of this, of all this, his left foot was a size and a half smaller than his right and by his adult years. Needless to say, that didn't stop him from doing everything he wanted to do. He was born in Kansas City, Kansas, but was raised in a small urban town in West Virginia. Growing up, he had a very normal life, playing baseball, being in the Scouts, as well as playing with neighborhood kids. And there were a lot of them. In high school, he was given private dance lessons because the musical director wanted him to be in her recitals and musicals. She needed guys who could dance, so she left up the opportunity for those who was interested. Bryan was in many high school plays, including Guys and Dolls, My Fair Lady, and he also played the sousaphone in the high school band. Their group of 4 sousaphone players, with their strong sound combined with their little choreography, would help them become the boogieing basses. Many audiences were well entertained by their dance routine and blasting sound during halftime shows and band competitions. Bryan attended WVU and got his first experience of the real world and what it held for him. After a year and a half, it was determined that college might not be for him. It certainly had nothing to do with his outstanding GPA of 0.90 or partying with his kung fu buddies, Wes and Scott. They may or may not have ended up in many bar fights that seemed to follow them wherever they went. He had enlisted in the Army Reserves early in his 3rd semester for some additional money for school. However, he would soon make the decision to transfer to the regular Army a few short months later. He did his basic training at Fort Dix, aka the Sand Pit, and then was off to the Presidio in Monterey, in California, to attend linguistics training to learn Czech. It was here that he would learn discipline, order, responsibility, and develop his determination that would shape him into the man he would become. There was no room for error, as they were pressed to succeed in their studies of foreign language. After his training, he was shipped off to Augsburg, Germany. Bryan would spend his days in a secure building with no windows and only one door in and out. Inside, he and his team would listen to radio communications, which were mainly static, read international newspapers, and do various other intelligence gathering activities. High stress and great discipline were the orders of the workday. However, time off was his to enjoy. It was about this time which he developed that double life and he embraced the punk rock scene. He enjoyed being a little different and unique. He sprayed his hair blue and acquired a number of ear piercings, including 7 alone in one ear. He washed out the hairspray and covered his piercings and transformed back into his military life. He finished his 4-year Army career and went back to WVU, more disciplined and now more driven to succeed. He did, however, still know how to enjoy life. With his new knowledge and direction from the military, he excelled at this time around. He graduated with his new partner in life, Trish, headed out on their next adventures. Growing up, I looked up to Bryan, as I did all my brothers. With Doug, it was his athletic ability. With Joe, his meticulous and detailed nature. But with Bryan, it's just something different. He had this laissez-faire attitude about so many things. He didn't really care what people thought of him. To say he marched to the beat of a different drum kind of sums it up. As with most of his siblings, there were squabbles from time to time. There was this one time, I vaguely recall, Bryan and I were play fighting in the basement, and I punched him flush on the cheek, which made that smacking sound, as it did in all those spaghetti westerns we used to watch in the 70s. I could tell by the change of expression on his face that I needed to run, which was pretty much my normal tactic, hit and run. Hit, run, try to get to the outside where I could outrun everyone. This time I thought, man, I'm going to outsmart him. So I ran out the front door, in through the garage, into the kitchen with Bryan in hot pursuit. 3 factors changed the outcome that day, which would normally find me finding my mom and begging her not to let someone kill me. I locked him outside in the garage. 1, it was cold, and he was soft-footed. As I stood on the other side of the single-pane, non-safety glass window, just smiling from ear to ear, bam! He punched me right through the glass. It sent shards of glass flying, including into my mouth and gums. As a sheer terror took over me and my soul, I tried to scream, "Oh!" while holding that not-so-happy smile I'd only been wearing moments ago. Bryan was extremely instrumental in development of my late teens and early 20s, as all my brothers were. Growing up, we played Avalon Hill board games, as well as Dungeons and Dragons together with his friends. This helped cement our relationship for years to come. Later, as I took on leadership roles, he gave me various management and leadership type books to read, and also I would also talk to him about how to address different management situations with peers, subordinates. He had also deterred me from entering the military, saying Mom and Dad already had one of us to worry about, they don't need you too. In 2006, after chasing me for about 10 years, he finally got me interested in the Highland Games. I attended a clinic hosted by the great Ryan Vieira, one of the greatest Highland Games athletes of all time. We lost Ryan to meticulous prostate cancer just this past February. May he rest in peace. After that clinic, I started competing in 2007 at Bridgeport, West Virginia. That's where I truly caught the Highland Games bug. Bryan would go on to coach me at his home and from far. He would give me drills to do, we'd share workout information. We would go on many adventures, competing all over the world, all over the United States, including West Virginia, Virginia, Maryland, Massachusetts, Missouri. And one of our greatest adventures was our trip to Scotland in 2014 for the Masters World Championships. We toured the country enjoying the local fare and so many castles. Now Trish had planned this entire trip, from flights to medium-sized rental car, a Mercedes S-Class, to all the bed and breakfasts along the way. We met so many new friends and got to see a lot of old friends who had participated in the Guinness Book of World Records for most cavers tossed at the same time. It was one of the most memorable trips I can remember. Fast forward to that devastating day in May. And that morning, Bryan and I were planning on our next get-together via text message, which would be me going to his house for some face-to-face coaching as I returned in the Highland Games after roughly 4 years, a layoff due to an injury. Alas, it will not happen. People say that some people are larger in life. Bryan was both larger than life and larger in death. You see, the average person's ashes weigh around 6 to 7 pounds. Bryan's weigh a whopping 13 pounds. I want to thank everyone here for their stories over the last couple months of how Bryan may have helped them out or influenced them. Finally, this sums up Bryan as an athlete, a coach, a business professional, a friend, and a brother. In the end, our careers, our personal successes just won't matter. It won't be what we will want others to remember us by. All that will matter will be who we helped, how we went about it, and the lasting impression we left on those who crossed our path. Please live each day with that in mind. Thank you.
Although I've been trying. I'm David Meyer, and Trish, you couldn't have put it better at the beginning. Used a lot of the same words and phrases and thoughts. But there's so many of us here from Bryan's work life, or the work part of his life, that represent many different companies over years, decades. I had the privilege of being his last boss, for lack of a better term. But it really wasn't that kind of a relationship. We were peers, even though he reported to me. We shared ideas about how to approach work and people and situations all the time. But the most important thing for me, and I think a lot of us that worked with him can share this, that every day didn't start with a conversation about work. Right? Every work day started with a conversation about family, whether the family was Trish, Kat, or Colin, right? Whether the family was the extended family, the Scottish Games family. What was the morning workout like? What was the workout of the day that you had given to, the colleagues in the games, right? I mean, and all of that happened. Sometimes I would call, because I live out in Leesburg, and so I do the long drive in traffic, and Bryan and I would have these conversations when he's on the bike, right, or rowing sometimes, right, and we would just continue to talk about all the things that were not work related, but that would prepare us to have this relationship and would enable us to be better colleagues and friends in the workplace setting. A lot of you will be able to identify with this. He had a way, as others have said, of kind of bringing things down to the most basic, personable, communicable level when talking to people at work. He'd like to refer to himself as having had a West Virginia MBA, which has different meanings for different people, and what it meant to Bryan, at least the way he explained it to me, was, I don't have a Harvard MBA. I don't need a Harvard MBA, right? I don't need a Penn MBA, right? I have a West Virginia MBA, and I have a way of talking to people. And I have a way of breaking situations down and figuring out how to best communicate these concepts. One of those concepts that many of us got very familiar with were turkey, cow, and eagle, right? Describing people in the workplace. Who here's heard that? It's got to be more than a couple. Well, of course you have. All right, so turkey, cow, eagle, right? Describing people in a workplace. Turkeys, right? They're milling around, scratching at the dirt, pecking at the dirt, looking really busy and not accomplishing a whole hell of a lot. And yeah, that's the way he explained it to me. Cow, really productive, slow, methodical, producing a benefit. And then eagles, who soar, right? Visionary. Bryan was never a turkey, ever. And Bryan didn't like turkeys around him in the workplace. He had a way very quickly of sorting out who were the turkeys, and they're not going to help him, right? They're not going to be helpful to us in the workplace setting. So then going back and forth between who are the cows and the eagles, who are the cows that might someday want to become an eagle, how do we help make sure that they become an eagle? And that gets me to, I first met him when I returned to GDIT. It's my third time with the company. And the first thing he said to me on my first day, where I came in to be his boss, was he said, 7 little words: how can I help you be successful? That was Brian. He could not stand to travel for work, right? He couldn't stand it. And I don't know why, because, you know, he fits in airplanes really well. He fits in rental cars really well. He didn't have to carry a lot of luggage around. The only male that I've ever traveled with that had 2 suitcases and a backpack if it was an overnight trip. Right? He did it because he had to. But back to what he said to me, how can I help you be successful? So one of the things that I told him I wanted to do was, you know, we would work together to make the business successful, but, you know, I wanted him to travel with me a couple places, garden spots, you know, San Antonio in the middle of the summer, where you have to wear a business suit to have a negotiation with the government. And then at, 10, 11,000 feet altitude in the winter, Snowmass, Colorado, to sponsor the Disabled Veterans Winter Sports Clinic. For 3 years, I had pushed Bryan saying, hey, I started the corporate sponsorship of this. It's a really important event. You know, I think it'll be really meaningful to you. He finally gave in, and we went to Snowmass, and we had to hike about 1,500 feet from our starting at 10,000 feet, right, to get to some of the places where we had to do these events. And thank goodness Bryan was really good at hiking, too. And just we're trudging up the mountain, and we're doing these disabled veteran support events, and then we're trudging right back down, and then we're hanging out, just like you all talk about when you hung out with him after the games. Same kind of thing, you know. And so I really look forward to raising a toast to Bryan here. I did have one really great personal experience. Trish and Bryan and I went on a hike together. And we had been trying to get it to work out for a really long time. I had one of my German Shepherds with me, and it was, you know, when you can have a relationship with a friend and work with them, it's like, you know, then you never have a bad day at work. And Bryan left a lasting legacy on me and on all the people that I think have worked with him that are here in the room. And I'm also standing here, as you well know, Trish, representing hundreds of people just from GIT who had wanted to be here. You know, we were able to give, on behalf of the company, right, in Bryan's name, a small donation to the Virginia Scottish Games. So I think you'll also see some individual donations coming in from some of his former employees that he had a lasting impression on as well. So thank you all for your words. Thank you for inviting me, giving me the opportunity to say a few words about Bryan from the work perspective, and I look forward to raising a glass to him here shortly.
Now Drew's doing the toast.
Okay.
You're not doing the toast.
This is what happens when your mom doesn't actually tell you the itinerary.
There's a program.
Program you never gave me. I see. So, I'm already about 2 beers in, so I'm going to make this a bit quick. So, my dad, as many of you know, was great. The best. Awesomest ever. None can compare. 100%. He was, despite his size, very gentle and incredibly huggable. He liked to say he was a simple man with a simple mind, but we all know that was BS. He was a very smart guy. He was a lot smarter than he let on for a lot of people, and the best way this manifested was in pretty much any situation, he knew what to do. Like how to get out of it, how to solve the problem that was in front of him, or how to help other people solve the problem. Growing up, he loved playing games with us, be it board games, computer games, all that. Like, some of my earliest memories are sitting on Dad's lap, watching him massacre demons in the original Doom. My first ever D&D game was run by him. It was just me and him in the couch and on the throne in our living room here in Vienna. before he died, Dad got to do a lot with me. We got to play a lot of games. We watched movies together. We had a lot of really good conversations. I'm sure, and a lot of you have had a lot of these really good, very mentally stimulating conversations about just politics, history, just about anything you can think of. He had some knowledge on the subject and was able to hold his own conversation on them. So for me, he helped me really well in performing my current job and a lot of my other jobs, how to interact in the workplace with superiors and coworkers. Helped me get out there, get a job, get my certifications I needed. And he was really great at helping me get fit, get a workout routine done, and improve my fitness. Because, as I'm sure you've seen in these rotating pictures, I was a pretty chubby kid. He was always there for me when I needed him, and he was really good as something of an emotional rock when I wasn't having a great time of it. I miss him a lot. I miss my dad with pretty much every fiber of my being, and it really does hurt to have him gone. And a lot of you, like his siblings, such as Uncle Rich and Uncle Joe here, and his co-workers, such as Samir and Bill Lovell, and his extended family, such as Kyle and Quentin, and the people he tolerated, whose names I won't say here, so and of course, the throwers who he trained and competed alongside, such as, once again, Uncle Rich, MVP of the mentions here. Mike Kang, who was also a coworker who he trained. Beaufet, Drew, BJ, and a bunch of other people who are both in attendance and not. Such as Frank here, who I forgot existed until just now. And on some level, we all miss him in our own way. We all miss him, even if we don't feel the same. We still, like, for me, example, I every once in a while have this thought of like, oh, this is really cool. This thing I just learned, or this thing I did in this game is really cool. Dad would appreciate this. I'm gonna go tell him. And then I remember that he is dead. We've all mourned his passing, and while I think it is important to mourn his passing, I think it's also very much important to celebrate that everything he's done for us. For example, as a mentor, as a trainer, and as a brother, as a coworker, as a wife, as a son and a daughter, and just people he talked to in the neighborhood, who's like our parents' friends, or friends of our parents. Once again, 2 beers in. I'm a little sorry if this is a little rambling. Yeah. So I think that rather than not just be sad, a lot of you have those patches trained by Bryan McClain. I think every one of you can say with pride that, yeah, I knew Bryan McClain, and yeah, he helped me, and he was awesome. So I think let's not just cry and mourn his passing. Let's celebrate everything he did for us by continuing on with a smile on our face and a spring in our step for as long as we're going in the world. That way, he can look down on us and say, I trained that guy. That was my boss. That was my brother. I'm glad his gums are still okay.
I know there was talk of my brother being last, but I wanted to say some stuff too, if I can hold it together. I haven't eaten yet, so we'll see how this goes. I wanted to say that my dad has taught me so much about caring about other people, thinking about other people, and trying to help other people out when I can. And for example, Drew over there, when he needed needed a place to stay. He and his daughter lived in our basement. We turned it into a finished, it was already finished, but we redid the whole basement, and he stayed with us for a good long while. He lived with us, he was our roommate. And his cousin George lived with us when he was having a hard patch after his dad died. And my mom's sister, my Aunt Kat, she lived with my family when I was a baby, just like George did. Suzanne over there, one of his army buddies, lived with my family while I was in middle school when she was in a rough patch. One of his other army buddies, Steve, lived with the family when he was going through a rough patch. And most recently, my boyfriend, who was unjustly kicked out of the dorms because of something someone else did, and they were using him as a scapegoat. I'm serious. They tried to get him kicked out of the school. It was really messed up. Anyway, so after they kicked him out of the dorms unjustly for something someone else did, my family took him in. And that just is the kind of person my dad was, and also my mom is. Giving other people a place to stay when they're in a rough patch, because they know we all have that rough patch. And if we can help out our friends and family, it helps get them out of that rough patch, because everyone's got something, as my dad said, my grandmother would say, everyone's got something. And this love and care, it extended to so many people. Even Ryan Vieira was mentioned earlier, and may he rest in peace as well. I'm sure they're both throwing weights like hell up there, together with Bob Stewart and the thrower Colin, who passed away in an unfortunate motorcycle accident when I was like in kindergarten, and all the other throwers who passed. But where was it? My brain blanked out for half a second. Hold on. All right. So Ryan Vieira, we had clinics of Ryan's at our house, and other throwers would stay at our house. Like it was a hotel, and we only had one guest room, but we had the couch, we had air mattresses. The basement would be covered in air mattresses for all these throwers who were like just young men of all sorts of backgrounds, just in our house. How well did we know them? Not very well necessarily, but my family opened our home to them because they care. They are understanding, and it taught me to be so kind and understanding. And now I'm always trying to help other people, even if I don't know them all that well. It's like I want to help, and it speaks volumes for the kind of person my dad will always be. And hold on. He also was the kind of father everyone would want to have. I was so lucky. I am so lucky. Sorry. Just from the pictures you see in the slideshow, he was always there for us, right there for us from the very beginning, letting us climb all over him. He would sometimes just lift me up above his head when I was really little, and he would do that to my mom's cousins' kids too. My dad he just loved my mom's family so much too. My mom has a cousin, Kathy Purdy. She had 12 kids, and I know, yes, 12.
Bring up the air mattresses again.
And there was a period of time when I was in kindergarten. He was unemployed for like 6 months, but he started working on a book which my brother and I have vowed to work on finishing. It's a historical fiction about Scottish mercenaries in the, I believe, 30 Years' War. Anyway, so he would constantly be messaging with my mom's cousin's kids, And he would always end the messages with, "Shout out to my peeps in Purdyville," because that's what they called their compound, basically. And, you know, he showed everyone what love was. He expressed to us how much he loved us. Within the weeks of his passing, I would constantly be remembering hearing his voice go, "I love Will." He loved talking baby talk with us. As we got older, my dad would reminisce about when we were little, and he would be talking about how we would talk when we were little. Like when my brother and I couldn't pronounce each other's names quite right yet, so I called him Coey, and he called me Kathleen. And so he would start calling us by those pronunciations. He'd go, "Coey, Kathleen," and he would try to imitate us. And then also, when I introduced him to the goat scream meme, he would just, those of you who know the meme are already laughing because you know where this is going. He started imitating the goat screams around the house at random points in time. So no, you would just be like walking into another room in the house, and suddenly you'd hear "Ah!" out of nowhere for no reason other than he felt like it. He thought it would be perfect comedic timing, and he was always right. And my dad understood abstract humor and absurdist humor. He understood Gen Z humor and later millennial humor. Which my mother has a hard time grasping. So, I'm sure there are many here who have meme upon meme, just internet joke upon internet joke sent to them from my dad. And because my dad always was trying to make people happy and laugh along with him and make sure that they were having a good time, which I also learned from him to do that. And I think my dad is the kind of person that we should all aspire to be, someone who's reaching out to others, caring about others, not caring what other people think, really. I mean, as long as, you know, what you're doing is actually okay and not hurting anyone else. I mean, if you're hurting someone else, no. But, and someone who's always trying to make people laugh and smile and just brighten everyone's day. And I want us to continue that legacy, live like he would. Instead of, you know, WWBD, what would Bryan do? As long as that's not punching someone through a glass door. Thank you.
Here, so we're down to the toast. So let us raise a glass in memory of Bryan McClain. To everyone in this room, he was a beloved friend, coach, mentor, son, father, or husband. Bryan was a mountain of man who was always there with an encouraging word, who showed a true affection to those in his life, which was personified by his family, who were always there with open arms and open doors, to encourage and support those of us in this room any way they could. Let us remember Bryan and never forget that those we love don't go away. They walk beside us every day, unseen, unheard, but always near. Still loved, still missed, and very dear. Now, let's toast to an amazing brother who will never be truly gone until the ripples of his life fade away. Bryan.